The Disney post-Renaissance age spanned from 2000 to 2009 and is often seen as the actual Dark Age, as opposed to the named Dark Age after Walt's death. Following one of the biggest and most influential periods of Disney history put a huge amount of pressure on the following decade, and Disney absolutely struggled. The post-Renaissance age included Dinosaur, Fantasia 2000, The Emperor's New Groove, Atlantis the Lost Empire, Lilo and Stitch, Treasure Planet, Brother Bear, Home on the Range, Chicken Little, Meet the Robinsons, Bolt, and The Princess and the Frog. The era absolutely included more failures than successes, including several financial and critical disasters. If the Dark Age is sometimes viewed as Disney's lesser films, then the post-Renaissance age is sometimes viewed as a mixed bag of some greats and some absolute catastrophes. I'd like to give Disney some credit here though, because 12 movies in a 10-year span is no small feat. Keep in mind that the Disney Dark Age, which spanned from 1966 to 1989, 20-something years, more than double this current era, saw them only produce 8 films. So the fact that they made 12 movies is remarkable. And even if they weren't all successes, every single movie of the post-Renaissance era showed that Disney was willing to take some risks and explore new avenues in telling their story and their creativity, and really cared about the movies that they were putting out. Also, side note, this era contains one of my favorite Dark Horse favorite Disney movies, and it is not Lilo and Stitch or The Emperor's New Groove. So, knowing all that, why is 66 to 89 considered the Dark Age and not this one, which had not only one but 2 massive commercial and box office flops that lost the studio money? Let's talk about Pixar. Pixar saw massive success in the 90s with Toy Story, Toy Story 2, and A Bug's Life all releasing to critical acclaim and box office success. But it was in the 2000s when Pixar really cemented itself as one of the greatest animation studios of all time. Now, Pixar was not owned by Disney when they started. Disney would eventually buy them in 2006. But Disney was merely distributing and co-producing the films with Pixar at the beginning. That didn't matter though, because they had a very close symbiotic relationship, and at the time, it was really easy to consider Pixar movies as Disney movies. The Disney logo appeared before every single Pixar movie, and the general population just saw it as, oh, that Disney movie Toy Story. Maybe you would go, that Disney Pixar movie Toy Story. But you would never separate the two. It was Disney Pixar versus DreamWorks. It was never Disney versus Pixar versus DreamWorks in a general sense. This is incredibly important for Disney's image, because while Disney is striking out during this period, left and right with Atlantis the Lost Empire and Chicken Little and Home on the Range, Pixar is making masterpiece after masterpiece. We've got Monsters Inc., The Incredibles, Ratatouille, and these movies are not only making millions of dollars at the box office, but they are also literally saving Disney's reputation. So it's no surprise that in 2006, Disney moved mountains in order to purchase and own Pixar. Now, with all that context for the time period and what was happening with Disney and Pixar at the time, I'd like to talk now about what I consider one of Pixar's undisputably biggest successes. A movie that would come to define them as a critical and box office behemoth and an unstoppable force in animation. And I'm talking, of course, about Finding Nemo. Finding Nemo released in 2003 and was an immediate hit, garnering glowing reviews and smashing box office numbers. I want to just rattle off a few statistics here for you just to explain the heights of Nemo's success. On a budget of $94 million, Finding Nemo brought in a domestic gross of $339 million, and to date has brought on a worldwide gross of $941 million. At the time of release, the only animated movie to have grossed more was The Lion King, nearly a decade earlier, and it would take another decade before another original animated movie, Frozen, would make more money at the box office. That word original is important because, sure, you have your Toy Story 3s, your Shreks, and Minions eventually making millions of dollars at the box office as well, but these were sequels to established franchises. The 2000s found Pixar mainly finding success by trading off of their name and using their brand to launch original movies about fish, robots, rats, monsters, and cars to massive box office success. Finding Nemo's success didn't stop at the box office though. It currently holds the record for the best-selling DVD of all time. This is not just for animated films. Finding Nemo sold more DVDs than The Lion King, The Little Mermaid, and Frozen combined. The original Spider-Man, released just a year before Finding Nemo and sold 19.5 million DVDs, Finding Nemo doubled that number and sold almost 40 million. No other movie in history has come even close to those numbers in terms of DVD sales. So yeah, Finding Nemo was huge. Finding Nemo tells the story of Marlin and his son Nemo. Before his son was born, Marlin experienced a terrible tragedy where he lost his wife and nearly all his unhatched children in a devastating barracuda attack that left Nemo as the sole surviving egg. Because of this attack, Nemo is born with a disability in the form of a tiny fin, and Marlin is left in a deeply overprotective state with his only son. The first 15 minutes show us both just how paranoid and overprotective Marlin is, and how curious Nemo is, and how eager he is to break away from his overprotective father. Nemo wants to go to school and explore and learn about all kinds of things like sharks and how old sea turtles are, and Marlin is extremely reluctant but leads him to class, making sure to stay in front of him and constantly stopping him from advancing for fear that he may get hurt. This all leads to an absolutely marvelous sequence that sets up the thematic statement of the movie.
You think you can do these things, but you just can't, Nemo.
Nemo's ultimate rebellion.
If you put one fin on that boat, are you listening to me? Don't touch the boat. Nemo!
He touched the butt.
And the first of many terrifying jump scares in this movie, as Nemo is taken by a scuba diver and is separated from his father. At this point, the movie diverges into two plots. One following Marlin and newfound travel companion Dory as they travel the ocean trying to find Nemo, and the other following Nemo, now trapped in a fish tank with some new fish as they try to plot their escape, and Nemo tries to overcome his disability and learn that he can do these things that the world and his father doesn't think he can do. We're going to start by talking about the Marlin and Dory storyline because I think it's some of the best work that Pixar has done. So the story plays out in episodic fashion, with every scene just being the next monster or fiend or obstacle that Dory and Marlin discover. And as we'll discuss, each scene is so creative and ingenious in its construction that you just can't help but watch and applaud afterwards. They've done some incredible work here. But first, we have to meet Dory. And Dory's a pretty incredible character because she makes a great foil to Marlin, not only in their characterization. Marlin is a highly neurotic and anxious and paranoid fish, and Dory is a very carefree, hyper, just go with the flow, as we learn, short-term memory loss having fish. And that character dynamic is a lot of fun, but what makes it extra special is that because Dory has short-term memory loss, she becomes another character with a disability that Marlin has to travel with. And it is through this disability with Dory that he starts to learn and is eventually able to trust that Nemo can make it through life with his disability as well. So having two characters with different disabilities is actually a really smart move on the filmmaker's part, because it's going to really highlight to Marlin how he needs to grow in order to be a better father to Nemo. We're going to see many, many instances during these upcoming scenes, different ways in which Marlin has to learn to trust Dory, even though he initially does not because of her disability. Immediately after learning that Dory has short-term memory loss, Marlin tries to leave, but is interrupted by Bruce the shark, and this leads to what is arguably the best 6 minutes of the movie. Seriously, I think this scene is one of the greatest scenes in any movie ever made. So let's break it down. We are introduced to Bruce, who invites our newly joined pair to a party. We then set up a massive field of mines and are warned that they will pop if they get too close. We get a Marlin and Dory are about to be eaten by sharks fake out that cuts to the revelation that these sharks are actually a part of a 12-step Fish Are Friends Not Food AA type of program and are on the road to self-improvement to not be mindless fish killers. We have a few great jokes that lead into the discovery of the diver's mask that gives us our next clue towards finding Nemo, which immediately leads to Marlin and Dory struggling, causing Dory to get injured and triggering Bruce's bloodthirsty shark nature. This is followed by a terrifying and action-packed chase sequence where our two tiny fish friends desperately try to evade this massive, powerful shark who is destroying this ship trying to eat them. Through all this excitement, we learn the very important plot point that Dory can read, that she can analyze her situation and think critically when she unlatches the torpedo to choke Bruce so that they can get the mask, and we get a payoff for the minefield that was previously set up. By Bruce launching that torpedo into one of them, it causes a massive chain explosion that explodes every single mine in the area and culminates in a near silent and hilarious joke to cap this scene off.
Nice.
It is 6.5 minutes from the moment Bruce says hello to the moment the pelican flies off. And in those 6 minutes, we laugh, we scream in terror, we learn things about our characters, and we end up just exhausted chuckling at the ride we were just on. It's a literal roller coaster, and it's one of the greatest scenes Pixar, or really any company, has ever written. I wouldn't change a single thing about it. Now, all this talk about sharks has really got me thinking about the ocean and its beaches. And one of the things I've always wanted to do on the beach is surf. But I've always been afraid to surf because of sharks. So I'd like to thank the sponsor of this video now, my cutie Mango, who's a lot more fidgety than her sister sometimes, but I couldn't make any of the videos without this kitty. Why are you looking at me like that? What else were you expecting? Anyway, the amazing thing is, while no other scene reaches quite the same heights, every single Marlin and Dory scene that follows is still an absolute knockout. I'm about to give you a play-by-play on Marlin and Dory's story, so if you don't want to recap, if you just saw Finding Nemo recently or you remember it, feel free to skip to this timestamp to skip the recap. They wake up post-explosion, losing the mask in the process, and have to dive deep into the pitch-black ocean floor, where we have a comedic moment where they find this little blue light that is followed by yet another jump scare and another horrifying chase sequence. Seriously, the ocean is a horrifying place that I never want to visit. We have a comedic scene where the duo come across a school of impressionist fish that mock Marlin, but help the two of them find their way and help set up again that Marlin still does not trust Dory, leading into the jellyfish sequence, which is terrifying, but absolutely beautiful piece of animation. This scene is also important, as Dory gets severely injured from this scene, and it is a direct result of Marlin not only refusing to trust her, but also tricking her into following along with his plan instead of having a discussion, because he is continuing to treat her like a child and like he's the only one who knows what he's doing. They wake up from their jellyfish encounter to have a scene with sea turtles, a sea creature Nemo previously had expressed great interest in, and Marlin gets another direct lesson on how parents need to trust their children and let go. He also tells a story to the turtles, which leads to a wonderful transitionary scene, which, by the way, is the only scene in this entire movie without Marlin or Nemo in it, where we find out how word gets to Nemo about his dad coming to rescue him. Following this, Marlin and Dory get lost, and Dory wants to stop and ask a fish for directions. Marlin hesitates to trust her, to ask for help, but upon seeing her injuries from their jellyfish encounter, he feels a pang of guilt and decides to let her try. Dory finds out that they are speaking to a whale and starts speaking whale, a language she claims to be proficient in. Marlin mocks her and belittles her before the whale sneaks up behind them. Another tense scare, by the way. This movie and the ocean, again, are terrifying. And the whale swallows them whole. We are then in the whale's mouth, with Marlin fearing that this is the end, and Dory has essentially killed them. But after having a genuine heart-to-heart about Marlin's overprotectiveness of Nemo, the whale starts talking, and Dory reveals that the whale wants them to go into its stomach. Marlin refuses, as this is essentially him accepting death in his eyes, but Dory lets go without a second thought, and Marlin catches her. Dory begs him to let go, as he questions how she knows something bad isn't going to happen. Dory admits she doesn't, but to trust her. And solidifying that Marlin is going to trust and overcome his paranoia, he lets go, and they both plummet into the unknown, whereupon they are immediately released through the whale's spigot and are in Sydney Harbor, exactly where they need to be. Hooray! We now get to the final leg of our journey, where Dory and Marlin are saved from becoming breakfast, travel with Nigel to see Nemo, which leads into a chaotic scene where fish, bird, and man fly around this dentist office, and Marlin and Dory see what they perceive to be a dead Nemo in a plastic bag. This leads to our final solo Marlin and Dory scene, where a heartbroken Marlin decides to go back home. Dory begs him not to leave because she remembers more when she's with him, and no one stuck with her this long before. She says she doesn't want to forget. He says, but he does, and swims away. Every single one of those scenes is an absolute banger, and cut together would make an unforgettable journey of a film with nary a low point. If you're enjoying my content and love hearing me talk about Disney movies, recap Disney movies, talk about Disney history and lore, talk about the context in which Disney movies were made and the timeline in which they were created, basically all things Disney, then please like and subscribe. I have a goal to reach 100 subscribers by the end of 2024, and based on the last 2 videos, I really think I can make it. So smash that like button, or smash that subscribe button. I'm new to this, I don't actually know which one is which. What am I supposed to say? Like and subscribe, please. Okay, we're now going to go through Nemo's story, so if you want to skip that recap, which is much shorter, go to this timestamp, right here. Now, I don't want to mince words here. Nemo's story is absolutely the weaker part of this film. It is not bad per se, it is just not able to be as creative or grand as Marlin and Dory's because he is confined to this dentist office and fish tank for almost the entirety of his story. That doesn't mean we don't get creative though, and they definitely make really good use of the limited setting that we do have. Nemo arrives in his fish tank and is introduced to the eclectic fish that live there. The pelican Nigel that will eventually bring his dad to him, and the antagonist of his story, Darla, a little girl with a history of killing her pet fishes by shaking their bags too hard. Nemo gets scared and gets pulled into the tank's filtration tube where he struggles to get out. When he claims he can't get out on his own because of a bad fin, a fellow tankfish, Gil, reveals that he too has a broken fin and it's never stopped him. Thus, Nemo focuses hard and is able to pop out of the tube on his own, overcoming his disability on his own for the first time. In the next scene, Gil and the tank gang officially welcome Nemo to their crew after he proves himself by swimming through
The Ring of Fire! Turn on the Ring of Fire. The Ring of Fire! You said you could do it. The Ring of Fire!
and Gil reveals his escape plan to use Nemo to help them break the tank filter, making the tank filthy, so that the dentist will take them out in bags and they can roll out the window into the sea. It is revealed by the other characters that this is not Gil's first escape plan and they have never worked. The next scene shows Nemo attempt the escape plan, but due to a faulty placed pebble, the filter turns back on while he's still swimming out and he nearly gets killed by the motor. The tank gang is able to save him and they swear off attempting that ever again. In the next scene, Nigel reveals to Nemo the story of his dad who is fervently crossing the ocean looking for him. Emboldened by hearing that his paranoid and nervous wreck of a father took on 3 sharks, Nemo flies back into the filtration system without warning anyone, and as they scramble to save him, he reveals, boom, he already completed the task. Thus, the escape plan is set into motion. We then see the tank is filthy, and all that's left is for the dentist to take them out, and they can roll away to freedom. They then wake up the next day to find out
The tank is clean!
as the dentist has installed a new filtration system overnight, and as they try and plan their next move, who should arrive but Darla. The dentist attempts to pull Nemo out of the tank, but all the fish jump into the dentist's net and swim together to overpower him and pull the net from his hand. This is important. The dentist then immediately pulls Nemo out anyway using a plastic bag. This leads into the previously mentioned chaotic scene where Marlin arrives and mistakenly thinks he's too late and the Nemo has perished. This turns out to be Nemo only playing possum, however, and he is dramatically saved by Gil, who helps send him flying down the drain and back towards the ocean where he belongs, officially accomplishing the grand escape plan, at least for Nemo. This scene also includes my absolute favorite joke in the movie. This face absolutely kills me. It is at this point where the 2 different plots converge. Nemo emerges out of the pipes into the ocean, runs into Dory, and the 2 of them are able to find Marlin. We have one more tense scene where Dory is caught by a fisherman's net. In an effort to save Dory, Nemo swims in but is stopped by Marlin. Nemo begs his father to trust him, and, having gone on this journey with Dory, Marlin lets go of his son and agrees to trust him and his plan. They have all the fish swim down as Nemo just learned minutes earlier with the dentist net. The fish are able to reverse the pull of the boat and all manage to escape, including Dory. We find Nemo trapped under the collapsed net and Marlin rushes to his side. Nemo is okay. Nemo tells Marlin he doesn't hate him. Marlin tells Nemo how old sea turtles are, and we wrap things up in a perfect circle by Marlin now racing Nemo to school, wishing him a fond farewell as they go, and Nemo swimming back to give his dad a big hug and an I love you before swimming away again. The story is wrapped up wonderfully, and it leaves me in tears every time. It is perfect. In rewatching the film and trying to think about what scenes I wanted to highlight, I knew I was going to end up recapping the entire film because I just love it so much. Yes, I think Marlin and Dory's scenes are much better than Nemo's scenes, but I still love Nemo's scenes. I love Nemo. I love the tank gang. I love the escape plan, Darla. It all works so well, and the movie just comes together so cohesively for me. The film is an easy 10 out of 10 for me. And while it's not my favorite Pixar movie, in fact, it's not even my favorite Pixar movie that came out that decade, I do think it is extremely important, and its monumental success is one of the major reasons that Disney bought Pixar. Its monumental success is one of the major reasons that Pixar felt it could stand on its own and why Disney felt determined to buy them. Disney paid $7.4 billion in 2006 to own Pixar. This was a huge deal for them. And in return, they also had to bring in Steve Jobs, who owned Pixar, onto the Disney board, and they made John Lasseter, one of the original animators of Pixar and director of Toy Story and Bug's Life, they made him the head of the Walt Disney Studio Animation Department. Pixar had obviously had stellar successes before Finding Nemo, but I truly believe that Finding Nemo topped them all, both obviously on a profit standpoint, but also on a filmmaking standpoint. Over 20 years later, wow, the film still holds up and is an absolute treat to watch. And also, how many other movies can say that they've had an original musical made from them and put into a Disney theme park? We're not talking about Beauty and the Beast or anything else having its music adapted and shown in the parks. Finding Nemo is not a musical, and they created a musical with the team that made the music from Frozen and Book of Mormon and Avenue Q. They created a Finding Nemo musical and put it on in Animal Kingdom, and it is fantastic. They did redo it during COVID, and when we came back from the closures, it's now like 15 minutes shorter, and I don't think it's as good. But I still watch it every chance I get to go to Orlando. If you've never seen it, I highly recommend it. Finding Nemo the musical, not as good as Finding Nemo the movie, but what a joy to watch. Live singers sitting down in Orlando in air condition for about 30 minutes. And amazing puppet work and animatronics. Like, you can't ask for more at Disney World. So those are my thoughts on Finding Nemo. What are your thoughts? Do you also prefer Marlin and Dory scenes, or do you prefer Nemo and the Tank Gang? Where does it rank in terms of the other Pixar movies for you? Is it your favorite? So this is the first Pixar movie I've had to watch on the list. Remember, the list that we're going through has all the Disney movies and Pixar movies. And since this is the first Pixar movie, it is number 1 on my Pixar list so far. We'll see what the next Pixar movie is and see if it replaces it. Like I mentioned, Finding Nemo, incredible movie, 10 out of 10, but not one of my favorites. So that's how you know we've got a really high bar to clear with Pixar. They've made some great films. But let me know what you thought in the comments below. And for our next movie, for Movie Club, I'm super excited because we're watching a movie I haven't seen yet. We'll be watching Strange World, which is Wish is their newest film. So it's came out 2 years ago, but I've never seen it. I know nothing about it. All I know is it kind of flopped. No one I know saw it, so I'm going into this completely blind, which is super exciting. I don't get to say that about a lot of Disney movies. So stick around, make sure to like and subscribe if you like what you've seen, and if you want to hear me talk about Strange World, I'll catch you next week.